The Arizona wind, carrying the scent of pine and red dust, had a sharp bite to it. Clara pulled her worn jacket tighter, her breath pluming in the frigid air. Her daily walk into the Coconino National Forest wasn't just a habit, it was her anchor. Amidst the towering ponderosa pines and the silent rust-colored earth, she found a peace that the rest of the world couldn't offer. Life since her husband, Tom, had been a lesson in quiet solitude. But this morning, the stillness was different. A metallic sheen, out of place among the muted greens and browns of late autumn, caught her eye. It glinted through a thicket of scrub oak, down a slope she rarely traversed. Her heart began a slow, heavy drum against her ribs. Curiosity, a rare visitor, pulled her off the path and down the steep, leaf-strewn incline. The sight that greeted her was a brutal, twisted wreckage. A small black helicopter, its tail section sheared off and its body crumpled like a tin can, lay half buried in the undergrowth. A thin wisp of smoke still curled from a mangled rotor blade. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the forest's natural hum. Clara's mind raced, a frantic search for an explanation, a plausible reason. Training exercise? A private flight? Her gaze swept the debris field, her hands starting to shake. That's when she saw him. He was slumped against a burnt-out pine, his head lolling to one side. His military-issue fatigues were ripped and soaked in a dark crimson that stained the ground beneath him. A gash on his forehead bled sluggishly into his matted hair, and his leg was bent at a sickening angle. He was alive, though barely. A faint, raspy groan escaped his lips as she approached. "Hey," she whispered, her voice a reedy thing against the forest's expanse. "Hey, can you hear me?" His eyes, a startling, vivid blue, fluttered open. They were wild with pain and paranoia. He tried to move, to push himself up, but a fresh wave of agony seized him. "Stay back," he croaked, his voice a gravelly whisper. Don't touch me." Clara ignored him, her decades of experience as an unofficial caregiver in her small community kicking in. She knelt a few feet away, scanning him for immediate life-threatening injuries. "I'm going to help you," she said, her voice steadier now. "You're hurt." "No!" He tried to grab the radio from his belt, his hand shaking too violently to unclip it. Don't call anyone." His fear was palpable, a live thing in the cold air. But Clara saw something beyond the terror, a man on the very edge of his will. She could see the pain, the shock, and the desperate, hopeless fight. She made a decision. She couldn't leave him. Not here, not like this. She worked quickly, driven by a quiet competence she'd forgotten she possessed. Using her jacket and a thick scarf, she fashioned a makeshift sling for his arm. She cleaned the worst of the gash on his forehead with water from her canteen, ignoring his pained hisses. He was a sergeant, she noticed, from the 3 chevrons on his sleeve. His name, stenciled above his breast pocket, was Miller, but it was the patch on his shoulder that drew her eye and held it. It was a small, circular emblem she'd seen only a handful of times in news reports, always blurred and accompanied by a hushed reverence. A stylized falcon in flight, clutching a lightning bolt. It was the insignia of a highly specialized covert operations unit, a group whose very existence was considered a closely guarded secret. A group that a few years ago was linked to a catastrophic mission in the Middle East that had left no survivors. The news reports had faded, the story buried under layers of official silence, but Clara remembered the whispers. She remembered the faces of the families who had lost sons and daughters, the hollow grief in their eyes. The man before her was not supposed to be here. He was not supposed to exist. Her hands froze as a new kind of dread, colder than the wind, settled over her. This wasn't just an accident. The wreckage wasn't a mistake. This man wasn't just an injured soldier. He was a ghost from a past the government had tried to erase, and she was now entangled in his secret. As she looked at the patch, at the pain-etched face of Sergeant Miller, She realized she had not simply found a man in need. She had stumbled upon a truth that could either save his life or destroy hers. The hours that followed were a blur of cold terror and quiet purpose. Clara had managed to get Miller to a small, hidden rock overhang, a place she knew well. She used pine boughs to make a rough bed and started a small, smokeless fire, carefully shielded from the wind. Miller, his face pale and clammy, had passed out from the pain, giving her time to assess his injuries more thoroughly. His left leg was definitely broken, the bone visibly misshapen beneath the tattered fabric of his trousers. His arm was badly dislocated. The gash on his forehead, though nasty, was not life-threatening. The most immediate danger was shock and internal injuries she couldn't see. He was shivering violently despite the fire. When he finally came to, it was with a start, his eyes snapping open and darting around the small cave. He saw Clara, her face illuminated by the flickering firelight, and his entire body tensed. "Don't!" he rasped. "Don't say a word." Clara held up her hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not going to. The fire's not giving off much smoke. We're safe, for now." He stared at her for a long time, his eyes searching her face for any sign of deception. He was a man trained to see threats everywhere, and she was the biggest unknown variable he had ever faced. "How did you find me?" he asked, his voice low and strained. "I was just walking," Clara replied, her tone simple and honest. "I saw the wreckage." "Did anyone else?" He pressed. "The crash. Was there a call? A report?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "I didn't hear anything. I haven't seen a soul." A flicker of something, relief maybe, or a new, heavier burden, crossed his face. He tried to shift, and a guttural cry of pain escaped him. "My leg," he gasped. "I know," Clara said gently. "It's broken. I can make a splint, but you need real medical attention. We have to get you to a hospital." His head snapped up. "No, I told you can't." Clara knelt closer, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "Sergeant, look at me. You are going to die out here. I'm a simple woman. I don't know what unit you're from or what's going on, but I know what a dying man looks like." He looked at her, truly looked at her for the first time. He saw the kindness in her weathered face, the genuine fear in her eyes for his life, not for her own. A tiny piece of his carefully constructed wall of suspicion crumbled. He motioned to his breast pocket. "My radio. It's not just a radio. It's a tracker." Clara felt a sickening lurch in her stomach. "You mean someone is looking for you?" He nodded, a grimace of pain on his face. "Not to rescue me, to clean up the mess. My team, we were on a mission. It went sideways. We were betrayed. The crash wasn't an accident." His voice was laced with a deep, weary bitterness. "And now they think we're all dead. They want to keep it that way." The weight of his words settled on Clara like a physical force. The insignia on his jacket wasn't just a symbol of elite service. It was a target. And by extension, she was now a target too. "They have to think you're dead," she whispered, her mind racing, "and you want me to help you stay that way." "For now," he said, "until I can get to someone I can trust. But I can't walk, not with this leg." Clara took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly together. Her quiet life of simple routines was gone, replaced by a brutal reality. She could walk away right now. She could find a ranger, make an anonymous call. No one would ever know she had been here. But as she looked at his face, at the desperation in his blue eyes, she knew she couldn't. It wasn't about heroics. It was about humanity. He was a man, just a man, fighting to survive against impossible odds. And she had found him. "You're right," she said, her voice firm and resolute. "You can't walk, but I can carry things. I can make a travois." She gestured to the surrounding forest. "We have enough pine branches and rope. We'll leave the wreckage. We'll move far enough away that they can't find us, and then we'll try to find help." Miller stared at her, stunned. The woman he'd met just hours ago, a stranger with a soft voice, was proposing a plan that put her life in direct mortal danger. He had been a soldier his entire adult life, but he had never seen such quiet, simple courage. "Why?" he asked, the word thick with emotion. Clara looked into his eyes, a small, sad smile on her lips. "Because I can't just leave you here. Because every person deserves a fighting chance, Sergeant." His eyes held hers, a silent pact made in the cold, dark cave. The trust between them was not built on shared history or friendship, but on a shared understanding of what it meant to be alone and the profound human need to not be. Clara began to gather the supplies she needed, her movements purposeful. Outside, the wind howled, a low, mournful sound, but inside the small cave, a new kind of resolve had taken root. They would face the disaster together. Clara fashioned a makeshift travois from pine branches to carry the injured Miller. The journey was slow and brutal, each step a struggle against the difficult terrain. For 2 days, they moved deeper into the Coconino forest, away from the crash site and the inevitable search party. During their arduous trek, they shared their stories. Miller revealed he was from Kentucky and had joined a special operations unit to make a difference. He explained that his team was betrayed during a mission and that he carried a data chip with evidence of a government conspiracy. Clara, in turn, spoke of her late husband Tom and how the forest had become her sanctuary. They were two broken people who found a profound connection in their shared vulnerability. On the 3rd day, the distant sound of helicopter blades broke the silence. The hunt was on. Clara pushed down her fear and led them to a remote cave in the Red Rocks, a place so hidden that she was certain the search party would miss it. The climb was a near impossible feat, but Clara drew on the memory of her husband's strength and her own newfound resolve. Inside the cave, they were safe for the moment, but trapped. Clara's focus shifted from survival to getting the truth out. She proposed a desperate plan: find an old decommissioned ranger outpost nearby with an emergency radio. They made their final journey at night, reaching the outpost at dawn. The radio was a long shot, but their only hope. As Clara worked to get it to function, an unmarked black SUV screeched to a halt outside. "They're here," Miller said, his face a mask of weary resignation. With the sound of footsteps approaching, Clara knew she had one chance. She grabbed the microphone, her heart pounding, and spoke clearly into the static. "This is Clara Evans. I'm with Sergeant John Miller of the Falcon Unit. We are at the old Coconino Ranger outpost. We have evidence of a government conspiracy. We are being hunted. We need help. We have the data." The words were a final, desperate plea. As the SUV doors opened, Clara looked at Miller, who wore a faint smile of profound peace. They had done it. Clara's simple life was shattered, but in its place a new purpose had been forged. She was no longer just a woman who walked in the woods. She was a hero who had faced an unimaginable disaster and found the courage to fight back. Her journey had not just been a walk through the forest, it had been a journey to herself.